Okay. All right. What is today? Today's Friday. Happy Friday, folks. And for those of you who are have had any issue of the fires here in Los Angeles, our prayers go out to you for all of those who have been negatively affected by these fires. It's a sad thing. Hopefully, you'll be able to recover from that. Hopefully, you'll be able to. Mainly, hopefully, you're safe. That's the important thing, is that you're all, those of you who have managed to get away and evacuate, we pray that you're safe and that you're healthy, and that you're going to be all right. So our prayers are out to all those that have been negatively affected by the Los Angeles fires. All right, so anyways, we're going to do another drawing tutorial today and go pick up more from where we left off last time. I was talking to you about drawing in 3 dimensions, learning how to start to see three-dimensionally and build your characters three-dimensionally and use your imagination. So we're going to kind of pick up with that. So let's move this down a little bit here, give ourselves a little bit more space. So anyway, we were looking at this one drawing here, our little character here, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to we'll create another level here. I'm going to separate this and put it on another level here. So we're going to cut this out and we'll place it here on this new layer, and then we're going to turn the old layer off. That way we can make a drawing here. We can work on this drawing now. So anyways, going to make this a little smaller so we can put a body on it. And the main thing I want to do here is I want to keep working in the same way we were working before. I was talking to you about working with shapes. So what we've got here is a little mouse-like, bear-like type character. Well, let's say we use our blue again to make a shape for the body. So let's say we start out and we give him kind of a egg-shaped body here, right? So the first thing we do when we're drawing the shape is we're drawing the outline of the shape. And then the next thing that you want to do is start to define that shape in terms of dimension. And as I had said before, when you start to break a shape down, we're drawing these lines around the form. And you can tell that just by drawing these lines around the form, you automatically can see that you start to give this form a sense or an illusion of being three-dimensional. When I did the first line, it was more like just an outline. But then when you could see, then I drew these lines, internal lines, going across the figure and lengthwise and widthwise. You can see now that this rounded egg shape that I gave this character, just because of the lines on the surface of this egg shape, now it kind of starts to sort of give you the impression that it's three-dimensional. And so to come back to what I was saying earlier in previous lessons, the illusion of 3 dimensions is exactly that. It's an illusion because you're drawing on a flat surface. So therefore it is an illusion. If you were sculpting something in 3 dimensions, literally if you had a piece of clay and you were shaping something and you were making this little character in 3 dimensions, you wouldn't have to imagine the 3 dimensions. They would actually be there. But when you're drawing something, you're having to imagine those dimensions. You're having to create the illusion of those dimensions, meaning that your understanding of what it is you're drawing to get it to the place of it being dimensional then is an illusion that you're creating that you yourself need to see, and you also want the viewer to see. So as you can see, these lines around the form, help us to do that. Now I can then, from that point, um, add even more to this character. So let's say we move him down a little bit, and let's say we give him some legs. So what if we then, with the blue pencil, let's say we draw a couple of shapes that we stick onto this body. Let's say we stick one here for a leg, and let's say we stick another one here for a leg, and we will then do the same thing with these forms that we do with everything else. Then that we start to draw lines around the form so as to transcribe that this is a shape we're trying to define. Here we're going to draw, say, some feet. The feet might be like flat pads on the ground. Imagine them flat blobs of clay, if you would. And we draw lines around them so that we start to indicate that they have dimension. Now you'll notice that the farther foot, you'll see I have a foot in the front here, right? And then I have a foot in the back or on the side. And what do you notice about the difference between those 2 feet, how they look? They look different, don't they? And the reason why they look different is because the foot that's facing us is pointing outwards toward us. We can understand that foot because we can understand something that we're looking directly at. But when we turn something slightly to the side or 3/4, now we're having to imagine it shifted slightly to the side. And that's what's happening with that farther foot, is that it's turned. And so it's, you know, it's going to be the same shape as the one that's pointing at us, but we're having to imagine it turned to the side. Okay. So that's what's going on there. And so once we're able to get that to work, then we can then start to draw around it, and we can start to have an idea of what the shape would be around. Now we need to add some arms here, so we could say have an arm start here and go out, maybe out a little bit to here, right? And we'll erase the inside here so that we can define this shape. So let's say we have a shape that's jutting out, and we'll put a line around it so that we can define it. And then let's say we have another shape now going in. So like what we're doing here is we're going to make this character have his arm and hand sort of on his hip, like a hand on the hip kind of thing. So that, you know, like I said, every time you draw a shape, you're drawing the line first, but then you're wanting to define it as some type of shape. And so by putting the lines around it, you define it as a shape. Now here, I'm going to imagine the hand or fist kind of balled like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to have another. Now you'll notice with this one, because this body is going to be turned to the side. If this arm on the front here if the one in the back was doing the same thing as the one in the front, then it would go out. But you're only going to see a little bit of it, aren't you? Because you're looking around this body to see the other side. We'll put a little line on that. And then here, the arm going back down, maybe we'll see a little bit of the hand there. You know, maybe we won't see any of it, to be honest. Actually, as when something is turning around, a lot of times the things that you don't see, you just sort of drop those things out. But you can see that we have that shape on the other side. Now we've sort of defined what he's doing, right? All right, so now we can put a black line on top of this. So let's say we go over this, right? And we just indicate the areas where the lines are going to be black. we're going to skip over the construction lines underneath, and we're just going to put a dark line around what we need in terms of the arms and the hands on our character. So if we got this kind of thing, the foot comes out, because all we really needed is to show that. You might put some toes on the foot here like this, you know, cartoon bears or cartoon mice or whatever might only have 3 toes. And you put a cartoon bear might have a white area in the middle of the chest like this. So we've seen that on cartoon characters. So really all I'm doing now is putting a line around the form. Now if this is supposed to be a mouse, he might have a tail. Maybe his tail goes out like that, comes back. And even the tail, you could even draw a shape for the tail if you wanted to. Though usually when I draw tails on characters, especially mice, a lot of times I just kind of freeform them. I don't worry about the shape too much. But even a tail has shape. Okay, so you can see now that you've got we've defined the character all the way around in terms of the shapes that we've added, and you know, where we're going to put the lines, all of that, you know. Okay. So now the idea behind, as I mentioned before, creating these shapes and then defining them is so that you can understand what you're seeing when you design a character, or what you see when you see cartoon characters designed. A lot of the characters that we're all familiar with, this rule applies. You know, so when you look, for instance, at any character, a lot of times you are seeing a very specific design that's going on. Now, some characters have very complex shapes, but when you're drawing and design and making these characters come to life, you still really have to be thinking about the shapes that are there and how you're going to define those shapes. All cartoon characters will have very definite shapes that you can see, and you end up, you know, drawing those shapes, definitively drawing those shapes and making your character come to life as a result of the shapes that you're drawing. They all these cartoon characters, they all have ways to build them and create them that are very structured, dimensional rules. And once you know what those rules are in the design and the construction of a character, then you end up making the character much more believable. But most of what you're going to do as a cartoon or cartoonist, or even an artist in any event, is you do need to understand 3 dimensions. You need to get a sense of dimensions, and the illusion, as I mentioned before, that you're creating is an understanding of the shapes that you're drawing, what those shapes are, and then as you draw those shapes, you become more familiar with them. Now, when you see any of us artists drawing characters and giving them this dimensional, whatever you want to call it, the reason why it looks so, I don't know, I guess you could say kind of an amazing thing to watch someone do is because we have trained ourselves to understand the dimensional quality of the drawing that we're making. We've taken the time to learn anatomy and perspective. So we already in our heads have a sense of dimension, you see. And so even when we're drawing, I mean, a lot of times you'll see someone draw something and you'll say, wow, it looks like they're just kind of tracing something out of nowhere. But the reality is they're seeing the dimension on the page as they're drawing. They're seeing where the lines need to go. They're understanding that, okay, they're drawing one side of that shape, now they got to draw the other side of that shape, you know. Now, generally speaking, what you end up seeing most artists do in most cases is that they probably will do a sketch drawing first, a rougher, sketchier drawing to sort of delineate the details that they're going to draw later. They may indicate in a sketch where the drawing may end up. And this is one of the reasons why I did this drawing with a blue pencil or a blue line first, because what the reason was is that I wanted to delineate the areas that the sketchiness of where I want the line to eventually go. So I drew that in first line in a blue pencil so that I could then go back and, you know, finish it off with a black line. Okay. And but all of the things about the drawing that I want it to work are all things that I'm thinking about in my head. You know, when I'm drawing Donald, it's like, how do I know how much to diminish the eye that's on the other side here from the one that's in the front? Well, I know that his head has to be round, so I know that if I'm drawing an oval eye on the front here, as it goes away, it's going to have to diminish or be foreshortened somewhere. Same thing with the bill, and this bill is actually a fairly complex shape. So I'd have to understand what that shape looks like. I have to understand what the shape looks like from the front, from the side, from the back, so on and so forth. When I'm breaking down a shape, the more complex it is, the more I have to look at it from different angles. So for me to draw Donald's bill here, I had to, before I was able to do a drawing like this of Donald, I had to have an understanding of how does that bill look from different angles. Otherwise, I could not have drawn it from this angle. Okay, I wouldn't know. I'd have to be able to imagine, okay, oh, well, okay, so how does that look? If I were looking at it from the front, what would it look like? If I were looking at it from the top, what would it look like? So on and so forth. And that's kind of what ends up having to happen when you're drawing anything. Now, to some degree, you may be able to imagine what something could look like. And sometimes maybe the easiest way would be to imagine it or to draw it first from an angle that you could imagine what that would be, or you have a sense of what that would be. You know, like with Donald, for instance, you know, you could look at the bill if you looked at the bill from the top, it's really kind of almost a square shape. You've got an area here where the eyes are going to go if you're looking at it from the top. So let's say you got some cheeks going this way, but if you looked at his bill this way, so let's say his eyes are up here somewhere, you're looking at Donald from the top, like you're looking down on his bill. And by the way, Donald, if he's got a nose, it's going to be on the top of his bill like that. His bill is actually kind of almost a square shape, really. if you were looking at it from the front, you know, his bill is going to come at you like this. And this, you know, that's kind of what Donald's bill looks like if you're looking directly at him. So this is like a top view. And this is the front view. One thing that you might try doing, we might do is, as you're training yourself as an artist, um, would be to your advantage, I think, to occasionally see if you can't sculpt things. Like, so if you go out and I would say go to an art store, get yourself some cheap clay. There's a clay called Sculpey, which is pretty. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know, but you could get some cheap clay and just form some things that you can draw. You know, let's say you got a character in your mind. You know, see if you can mold something, and then once you've got it molded, or you maybe just do a head, then draw that head and turn it to different angles and draw it from different angles. That can be a really good exercise. Um, when I first started to draw cartoons, for instance, there were lots of books available on the subject. One of my favorite books as an animator was the Preston Blair animation book, which I would highly recommend anybody who is an animator, artist, cartoonist to get. His book was probably one of the most helpful books that I got when I first started. And back in the day, the book was it was just Walter Foster was made these books. You probably, if you go into art stores, you probably will see them, and they're fairly large. I'd say the books are like 11 by 14 size flat books that usually only have about 20 pages in them, so they're not very thick books. And it was just called Preston Blair Animation. That's what it was called. In fact, I think it was just called Animation. He later on produced a book that was a thicker book. And I've taught classes in animation where I've used that book as a textbook. It's also called Preston Blair's Animation, but it's a more expensive book. The original Walter Foster book, I believe, was like $7. Seven. It was very cheap, $6 or $7, and it was a book you could get pretty easily. I don't know that I guess they still sell them. If you go to art stores, you probably will be able to find them somewhere. So it's not like you necessarily have to go out and spend a lot of money on animation books. There are some books that you can buy that are actually pretty good that talk about how to break characters down. Another one that I thought was particularly great that I learned something from was called Fun with a Pencil. Uh, Fun with a Pencil was a book that was created by I believe it was Andrew Loomis, the artist Andrew Loomis, very, very good artist. And I believe you can download that book on the internet for free. In fact, I think you can download a lot of his books for free. So I would highly recommend you get that one. There is a website that's run by a couple of friends of mine called Animation Resources, and it's a great website. They talk a lot about animated cartoons throughout the years, and I believe these books also are available for free on those sites. I think you probably could. Um, the site is a free site, but I believe it's a site that does like the support of people who get on it, but it's primarily free, so it's not I don't think the membership is. It may cost something, but I would say you could probably get on the site for nothing and download the books. Anyway, they are worth getting, and they are very helpful in teaching you basics about drawing. So it's a good idea to get some of that kind of stuff. But I would say that the important thing you want to do here as an artist is you want to learn perspective, foreshortening. You want to get a sense of dimension in your drawings. And nothing works better than sculpting something. When you can make a three-dimensional sculpture of anything, whatever it happens to be, and draw from it, that starts to put in your mind what is what am I trying to do? What is the illusion I'm trying to create on the page? And this is one of the reasons why life drawing is so important. If you've ever wondered why did artists always go to life drawing classes? Why do we learn anatomy? What is that all about? This is why that's important. Because when you understand anatomy and you can break down the human body and you can draw from life, what that does is that gives you a sense of dimensionality. Because you're still doing the same thing. When you draw a model, for instance, you're taking, you're copying a three-dimensional object onto a two-dimensional surface. So what are you doing? You're creating the illusion again, right, of three dimensions. You're trying to capture what you see and put it down on a flat sheet of paper. But when you're drawing something out of your mind and you're doing the same thing, you're still doing the same thing. The difference is you're having to train your mind to understand the dimensional thing that you're making and then putting that down on paper, codifying it on paper. So that comes with the understanding of the dimensions of what you're drawing, the dimensionality of what you're drawing. See, as humans, we instinctively, we can perceive dimensions. We understand it, but it's then translating that we understand onto paper. And here's another thing. You take some liberties with these things too, as you, for the most part, understand what you're drawing. You start to project more and more on it, and you start to take more and more artistic license with it, and people will distort their understanding of dimensions or whatever to get sometimes distorted images, which may in and of themselves be kind of fun to look at. So anyway, the idea is to really to get your mind, to wrap your mind around how are you going, how are you viewing the image, and how are you able to translate that dimension that you imagine onto the paper, or you're saying, well, what is that dimension? What is it going to be? So it's an analysis of it. So really, when we sit down to draw and we create a character, we are we are imagining the dimensions. We are imagining the roundness of the character, the dimensionality of the character, and we're building it. And so that's what you want to do. You want to get to the point of building it. So, like I said, I think the important thing would be you want to get to a place where you understand dimensions. And so, like I said, nothing does this better than sculpturing something. So get yourself some clay, make some little models, and draw them. And you might even put lines on the models so that as you turn something, you can see what's happening. Like the lines that I've put on these characters, you might do the same thing on an actual model, so that when you turn it and draw it from different angles, you can see what are the lines doing that are going around that form, because that's how you're able to determine, well, what happened to this detail when I turn this head a little bit. What happened to it? What happened to the detail that was on the other side? Am I able to still see that, or did it go away? That kind of thing. Another thing that I do, that I would suggest you might do, is buy toys to draw from. Like you could buy little action figures or little sculptures that you like, and draw them and move them around and look at them from different angles. I find that to be very, very helpful also, because a three-dimensional model of something that you draw really can help you to get the drawing right. When Disney Company back in the day, and to this day they still do this, when they would do a feature film, a new feature film, they had an artist that would come in and make a sculpture of the characters that they were going to draw. And so the animators would have these three-dimensional sculptures. They called them maquettes. And what they were basically these little sculptures that were not so big that they couldn't be kept at the artist's desk. So the artist could like have this sculpture that they could then draw from. So, if they needed to see an angle on a character, they had a model sheet that would show the angle, but they also had a sculpture, and that sculpture was 100% accurate because that really showed the character from different angles. And I mean, especially if you have a very complex character, a realistic character, say like I don't know, like Pocahontas, for instance, or Aladdin, or if you've got a sculpture of this character, a maquette of it that you can turn and you can literally see what does he look like from the top down or from underneath his chin or whatever, and you can draw that, you see, then your drawing's going to be more accurate and you get it the right angle, you see. This is how these things are created because as the animator, you're still stuck with a flat image, right? You're not working. You're creating that illusion all the time of 3 dimensions. So you need to have something sometimes to look at so that you can get it right. Okay, well, I hope this particular tutorial has been of some help to you. It definitely, we're going to keep going down this road, and hopefully I can give you more and more information that will be helpful to you as an artist, and just keep working. It's a great practice you get, and you will. What happens is the more of this you do over time, what'll happen is you'll get to the point where any particular thing that is thrown at you, or character, or even if you have to invent a character, it'll become second nature, and you'll just know, like, oh, okay, I got to do this or I got to do that to create this illusion. It'll become obvious to you as to what that would have to be, and it's a wonderful thing. And it takes a little while for you to get there. Remember that the very best things you learn are things that always take time. Sadly, I know a lot of you young folks you want something right away. They'll be able to do it tomorrow. No, I hate to tell you, but things take time. And everybody's going to be different about this. Some people, it might take them a lot of time. Some people, it might not take them very much time at all. And you have some people who are just, they've God-given abilities, and they just can just do it. I just say the important thing is to have fun doing it, enjoy it. Pick things that you like to draw, that you enjoy. It's things that will, that if you're going to draw a lot, draw things you like to draw and draw them in dimensions, because then you learn because of your passion for the drawing. The more you're enjoying what you're doing, the more you're going to learn from it. And that's just the way it works. Okay, well, have a beautiful day. We'll do more of this. I'll see you in the next lesson. Once again, thank the Lord for the talents and gifts that you all already have. Realize that if you are an artist and you are learning, this is a process of learning. It takes time. You already have a certain skill set because God's blessed you with a certain level of skill. So be thankful for that and just go forward from there. Okay? Have a great day. Don't forget, Jesus is Lord.